Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all an update to my Buster Blader Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck profile for August 2025. The Buster Blader deck has always been a fan favorite, with the main focus of the deck being around the playstyle of Buster Blader and the Buster Whelp series, being able to use both cards to summon out our different fusion, link, and synchro monsters in the deck. I definitely do feel like we can get some more Buster Blader support. It'd be definitely cool if we can get like an Xyz monster for the deck, but until then, wanted to update the deck with what we have available for it. I am missing a couple cards for the deck, so I have some placeholders for cards that are missing, and one of the traps being Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman, one of the traps which is substituted with another card in the deck. So when we get to that point, I'll mention it again, but until then, let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So we'll go ahead and start off with the main deck monsters. Our go-to boss monster is Buster Blader, needed for the actual fusion summons for some of our cards like Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman, and also being able to make use of this card as one of the non-tuner options to summon out Buster Dragon with our tuner monster, which is our, Whelp series, whether it be Dragon Buster, the Destruction Sword, or the other variants of the card that also count as a tuner, like Buster Whelp. We have all of these monsters that can work in tandem with Buster Blader to get out our other extra deck resources, and then also utilize these cards as well with some of the traps that we run in the deck also. So this card also has the attack gain for each dragon type monster your opponent controls or in their graveyard, but the main play is obviously just to use this card for those resources. We also want to run 2 copies of Buster Blader, the Destruction Swordmaster, which I just have the 3rd copy of Buster Blader as a placeholder for the 2nd copy of this card. This card's name becomes Buster Blader while it's on the field or in the graveyard. If a monster your opponent controls is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you can target one of those destroyed monsters, equip it to this card, and once per turn you can send one monster card your opponent that you're basically monster card you control that is equipped to this card to the graveyard to destroy all monsters your opponent controls with the same type. So if your opponent's playing a deck that utilizes the different types of monsters, your Buster Blader, the Destruction Swordsman, can destroy those cards if it's one of the equipped cards added on to this monster. We also want to run 3 copies of Buster Whelp, the Destruction Swordsman. This is actually a pretty pricey card, and I'm surprised it hasn't been reprinted yet for the deck, but you do want to run 3 copies of this card. Also, when it's normal summon, you can add 1 Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand, except Buster Whelp, the Destruction Swordsman. You can only use each one of the following effects of Whelp once per turn. You contribute this card to special summon 1 Buster Blader from your hand or graveyard, or if this card's in your graveyard and you control Buster Blader, you can discard 1 Destruction Swords card to special summon this card. So the big play with this card is obviously you can search out the Destruction Swordsman spell that we run in the deck, or one of our other options for the quick play spells, and then vice versa. If we have Buster Blader, we can then get rid of the card that would require our fusion summon to get our dragon out to then go for the synchro play, or just use its setup to grab Buster Blade, and then if we have the additional Whelp series or another dragon option to summon out our fusion monster. It all works well in tandem with this one monster. And also 2 copies of Dragon Buster, the Destruction Sword. You can target 1 Buster Blader you control, equip this card to it from your hand or field to that target, and while it's equipped to that monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the X deck. And while this card is equipped to a monster, you can special summon this equipped card, giving you just a restriction for what your opponent can use to summon out as well, thanks to this card. But with how much the extra deck is utilized in this game, having this restriction for your opponent in a deck that can easily search this out is always good. And then lastly, for the Whelp series, the 1 Robot Buster Destruction Sword, you can target a Buster Blade you control, equip this monster from your hand or your side of the field to that target. While this card is equipped, spell and traps that are already face up on the field on your opponent's side cannot activate their effects. You can send this equipped card to the graveyard. That monster that was equipped with this card gains 1,000 attack, but having the restriction for face-ups with just how relevant field spells are for those cards for your opponent, this card can just help to shut down those cards while equipped to Buster Blader. And then additional dragon monsters we run include a small Bestial Engine, so 2 Sauronir, the 1 Magnamut, 1 Druisworm, and the 1 Baldrake for added banish options, because we can banish the Whelp series that we run for special summoning out these cards, and then being additional dragon monsters to use for the fusion play or extra deck plays with our Buster Blader monsters. And then for the rest of the main deck monsters, just a hand trap lineup of 3 Effect Veiler and 3 Ash Blossom. If you have the Mulch Army engine, you can always replace it for this spot in the deck for more draw power with going second against your opponent with those cards. For the spells, 2 copies of Destruction Swordsman Fusion. You fusion summon 1 fusion monster that lists Buster Blader as material from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or side of the field as fusion material. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard to add this card to your hand. So we run 2 just for the chance this card could potentially be banished by our opponent. It'll take away our fusion play, but having an add back card in the form of a spell from the graveyard by just needing to send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard can also help to set up other dragons that we may have other card effects to use in the graveyard as well. But still, it's a quick play spell. Once we go for our big attack, let's say with our Buster Blader, we can then use this card for the fusion play of our additional monster, being the final form, or the form as we know it, for Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. We also run the 1 copy of Karma of the Destruction Swordsman. Target up to 3 monsters of the same type in your opponent's graveyard. Banish them. If you do, 1 Buster Blader monster or 1 Destruction Sword monster you control gains 500 attack and defense for each of those banished monsters till the end of this turn. And if this card's in your graveyard, you can discard a Destruction Sword card to add this card to your hand. Having the Destruction Sword card discard option for the add back of this card is just a great response, once again, to decks that use the same type of monster against your opponent, with the rest of the spells being 2 copies of Super Pulverization, just additional fusion options to use our opponent's cards for more cards, our monsters for us to summon out as well, using those monsters. The 1 copy of Pot of Prosperity, along with the 1 Triple Tactics Talent, and the 1 Call by the Grave for the rest of the spell lineup. And for the traps, as I mentioned, I am missing the Prologue and 2 additional copies of Destruction Sword Memories, but for the other traps, 2 copies of Destruction Sword Flash. If you control a fusion monster that lists Buster Blader's material, banish all monsters your opponent control. And when a card or effect is activated that targets a Buster Blader monster you control, except during the damage step, you can banish this card from your graveyard to negate that effect and then destroy that card. So destruction power along with a negation makes this a great addition to the Buster Blader deck. 3 copies of Destruction Sword Memories. I have 2 copies of Solemn Judgment just as placeholders for those cards as well. Discard 1 Destruction Sword card to special summon 1 Buster Blader from your deck. You can banish this card from your graveyard to fusion summon 1 Buster Blader Dragon Destroyer Swordsman from your extra deck. So another way to get out our fusion monster in the form of a trap also. With this last spot would be for the Prologue of the Destruction Swordsman, but 3 copies of Typhoon just as a placeholder, as I said, for that spot, and 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. This could be the hand trap spot, or if you wanted to run cards like Trap Trick to use in addition with the multiples for the traps for a banish and search play, you can put that in this spot for the traps instead if you wish also. For the extra deck, 2 copies of Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. Needing 1 Buster Blader or 1 Dragon monster, this is where the Biceal engine can come in handy, just giving us an additional dragon as well that we can summon on our opponent's turn, interrupting their own plays by banishing their graveyard resources, and then using our quick play spells or traps to fusion summon with that card as well. It must be fusion summoned. It cannot attack directly. It gains 1,000 attack and defense for each dragon monster your opponent controls or in their graveyard. Change all dragon monsters your opponent controls to defense. Also, dragon monsters in your opponent's possession cannot activate their effects. And if this card attacks a defense monster, inflict piercing battle damage. So there are plays like DNA Surgery. We can change all monsters on the field to dragon. If you wanted to run that, you could also try mixing around the trap spots for copies of DNA Surgery as well. But still, this powerhouse gaining that attack and then being able to swing into those monsters is definitely one of the funner plays in the deck. With our other fusions being the Super Poly targets, so the 1 Mud Dragon, Garura, and the Dracostopelia, more generics to go into as well. The 2 copies of Buster Dragon, the Synchro monster, which we can use summoning out with Buster Blader and our Whelp series. All monsters your opponent control become Dragon type once per turn. If you do not control a Buster Blader monster, you can target a Buster Blader in your graveyard, special summon it, and once per turn during your opponent's turn, you can target a Buster Blader monster you control, equip it with a Destruction Sword monster from your graveyard, and this is a quick effect. So a faster way to grab our Whelp series as well. If we end up using them for the Synchro play, then this card can just equip those cards back onto Buster Blader, also making all of our opponent's monsters Dragon types, can then enact the effect of our Buster Blader as well, switching to the defense, so then he can hit for piercing damage. The 2 copies of Protector Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman as well. If this card is link summon, you can send 1 Destruction Sword card from your deck to the graveyard. Then you can special summon 1 Buster Blader monster from your hand. At the end of your battle phase, if your opponent controls no monsters, you can target 1 Buster Blader monster you control that did not declare an attack this turn. Inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's attack. So this card also makes it so if your Buster Blader can't, attack because your opponent has no monsters, you can then just use the attack of that Buster Blader to hit for for damage against your opponent. And then the setup power for our Destruction Sword cards in the graveyard as well to add back or special summon. And then the 1 Relinquished Anima, the 1 Striker Dragon, along with the 1 SP Little Knight, the 1 Heretic Seal, the 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and then our only Xyz that we run being the 1 Sky Crisis to overlay on top of monsters of our opponent utilize the extra deck at all during their turn as well. And then as for some of the go-to plays in the deck, we have the search power with our Buster Whelp, just being able to add the Destruction Sword card off of this card as well. So then we have that search for that, and then being able to tribute this card to give us the Buster Blader from our hand for the special summon option as well. So with this card, you can only use one of the following effects of Whelp per turn, and only once that turn. For the tribute play, you have that play to set up for the summon. So if you have the add back power for that monster as well, you can go for the synchro play, but that will require one more turn for that summon. You have the Destruction Sword Fusion, which if your opponent summons out a monster, you can rely on the Bysteel Engine to banish out and summon, and then have the quick play spell set to activate sending these 2 cards, and then depending on the Bysteel monster, you may have additional monster to rely on for that setup to give you out your fusion play. But if you have the Whelp in the graveyard and then the additional send of that card, you can have the synchro play by sending one of your Destruction Sword cards to then special summon this card back and then go for the synchro play using those 2 monsters as well. If you didn't want to go for the synchro play, having both those monsters on the field as well could also give you the Link 2 option to then send and set up more Buster Blader monsters from there as well. It all depends on what extra deck monster you want to go for that specific play. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed, and as always, until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.